Let's see. Mr. Crane, a couple of questions regarding your budget, and I'm just still trying to understand how these are put together. The $500,000 carryover that you're requesting to go beyond the end of the fiscal year into the next, is that something that is a recurring component of your budget? Do you currently have a $500,000 that's going to go into the FY25 or 24?
The 500,000 that we're requesting as multi-year money, we use that money to pay for non-personnel costs, such as contractors and service providers. In the past, we've asked that more money to obligate up through the following fiscal year, but we've reduced that quite a bit simply because we anticipate and we project for fiscal year 2025 that we're going to have lower non-personnel costs. So since we only use that to cover non-personnel costs, and we expect those to be lower, we've reduced the amount. But what we do use that for is what we consider the known unknowns. Every one of our hearings, our hearing officers are contractors, our mediators are contractors. So we simply don't know how many cases we're going to get in a given year. But if there's an unanticipated increase, then we would rely on that $500,000 in two-year money to cover those costs.
That sounds like you're anticipating lower expenses, but you don't want to give up that money, so you're asking to keep it in the budget and carry it forward. I don't really understand why things are different, and if you're projecting less, why don't you request less?
Request less in two-year money, or request less altogether?
I understood you said you're expecting your needs to be lower in the year.
We're expecting our non-personnel costs to be lower, but we're expecting our personnel costs to be higher. So all but $500,000 of our request that's all personnel costs increasing. The $500,000 more or less represents that portion of increased personnel costs that aren't offset by non-personnel costs, anticipated non-personnel costs.
Okay, that's still clear as mud to me. But in the last Congress, it was approved to allow offices to unionize. Yes. Just wondering how that program has progressed. How many are unionized now? How many are in the process? And how has that impacted your workload of your team?
As far as numbers, in fiscal year 2023, we had 8 representation election petitions filed, and we conducted 11 representation elections and issued certifications in those cases. We haven't had a petition filed in fiscal year 2024. We did receive a disclaimer petition in 2024, but recently we haven't had a lot of activity on the unionization front. We've retained an FTE to process those union petitions when they come in. That person does a number of other tasks for us, so I would estimate that about under 20% of his time is spent on processing union petitions. And our non-personnel costs concerning processing union petitions are de minimis. We use a contractor that allows us to conduct virtual secret ballot elections for employees both on the Hill and in the district offices, but the contracting costs, that's a contractor that's also used by the Federal Labor Relations Authority and the executive branch, but our contracting costs are de minimis.
Very good. Dr. Pugh, quick question. I noticed a lot of your budget is funded from the trust fund originally that was established, and you feed a lot off of the interest on that. What is the corpus of that trust fund? How much are we talking about?
So initially it was 7.5 million, and again, it's grown. But in our enabling legislation, it's really restrictive. So we can only invest in treasury bonds, so it hasn't grown nearly as much. But we don't touch the 7.5 million, and interest right now is, with low interest rates, I mean, if I had to...
It's been going up. I'd say
Well, yeah.
You're probably the only person around who likes high interest rates.
Exactly.
Hopefully you'll be coming back to us needing more because the interest rates are lower, but...
Yeah. So if I had to... I'm trying to think of the number last year. It was under $200,000. I mean, even with the large amount, like I mentioned, it was, let's just say approximately 18 million too, though. It doesn't generate $250,000 in interest. So, and that's with the conservative treasury bonds that we are restricted to, so. And again, in '88, when it was created, interest rates were just under 10%, so it would generate $600,000. That's not the case now.
Understand. Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, you're back.
Thank you. Ms. Bice, 5 minutes.
Mr.